This is the tale of future Gohan, the hero who survived the android's onslaught. In this timeline, there's no journey to the past to fix the present. Instead, we explore the original, unaltered future and see how events unfold. Join us as we dive into Gohan's epic struggle and resilience in a world without time travel. Gohan, age 9. Gohan's eyes flashed open, yanked from his dream. He sat up, trying to figure out what had woken him but found nothing. Rubbing his eyes, the tired boy shuffled to his dresser. He grabbed his green pajama bottoms and quickly slipped them on, deciding it was too hot for a shirt. The dragon-decorated top was tossed back into the drawer. With a hop, Gohan was out of bed. He flicked on the light and wiped the sweat from his forehead. The room felt stuffy, so he walked over to the window and pushed it open, letting the cool night breeze wash over his face. He pulled out the chair to his desk and sat down, grabbing a pen and paper from the bottom drawer. He needed to write down his dream while it was still fresh. His pen moved quickly as he wrote about playing with his father, waiting for dinner to be ready. In his dream, they had a contest to see who could eat more at the table. Gohan lost but laughed when Goku broke the wooden chair under him with his immense appetite. Chi-Chi was mad at first but soon started laughing at Goku's antics too. Gohan finished writing and sighed. He read over the memory a few times before carefully placing the paper into the open top drawer of his desk. The pen and remaining paper went back into the bottom drawer. These dreams had been a constant part of Gohan's life since Goku passed away. Almost every night, he dreamt of times with his father, mostly good memories, like their camping trip. That trip was one of Gohan's favorites, filled with competition and adventure. He remembered trying to impress his father with stories from his time training with Piccolo. "Dad, you won't believe what Piccolo made me do," Gohan had said, eyes wide with excitement. "He threw me off a cliff when I was only 4, and I couldn't even see the bottom." Goku's eyes had widened in shock. "Wow, Gohan, Piccolo really put you through some tough training, huh? That sounds scarier than fighting the Red Ribbon Army when I was 12. Gohan had grinned, eager to keep Goku's attention. "Yeah, it hurt a lot back then, but now it seems kind of funny. I was just a kid, and I didn't know how to fly yet." Goku chuckled, ruffling Gohan's hair. "You've really grown up, Gohan. I'm proud of you. But don't forget, I fought evil robots and crazy organizations when I was just a kid too." Gohan beamed, feeling a warm sense of pride. "I know, Dad. Your stories always amaze me." Gohan remembered after the story, his father had picked him up and lifted him onto his shoulders. Goku's cheerful mood had vanished, replaced by a serious expression. Concerned, Gohan asked, "Dad, what's wrong?" Goku sighed deeply and said, "Gohan, you might not realize it, but your childhood hasn't been like most kids. I just want to say I'm sorry for everything up until now. All the fighting, the life-risking battles, and seeing our friends die. You didn't have a choice like I did. You were forced into this because of the Sens threatening Earth, and then Frieza. But all of that is over now. So, Gohan, do you even want to fight?" Gohan's heart pounded as he remembered answering right away. "Of course, Dad. I love to fight." He knew that was the answer his father wanted to hear, but deep down, Gohan often questioned the sincerity of his response. Goku's face lit up with a big smile as he laughed and said, "That's my boy. Now, let's have a bit of a spar. I know you've been in some serious fights, but I don't think you've ever seen the fun side of a fight. Jump down and let's go." Gohan recalled happily jumping down and getting into his fighting stance before. His memory was abruptly cut short as he felt a sharp spike in power followed by a large explosion from the west. Gohan's eyes widened in shock. "What in the?" he exclaimed, turning to look out of his window. Instinctively, he reached out with his senses to identify the energy he'd felt moments before. Strangely enough, it felt familiar. Scanning miles upon miles of land, his search finally led him to West City. What startled him even more was recognizing the power signature. "Vegeta?" he said in wild shock. Confusion painted across his face as he thought, "What's Vegeta doing? Why would he be? Oh no." The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. When Vegeta had first arrived on Earth, he stayed in line because Piccolo had been stronger and could easily have squashed the Saiyan if necessary. But that short spike of power Gohan felt was several times stronger than anything Piccolo could ever muster. How'd Vegeta get so strong? Gohan thought, panic rising in his chest. He gripped the window frame tightly and stuck his head out into the wind, focusing on the night sky as he tried to send a mental message to his master, Piccolo. "Piccolo, can you hear me?" he called out in his mind, desperation tinging his thoughts. After several seconds with no response, Gohan's panic deepened. "No, am I too late?" Gohan felt a second large explosion shake the ground, coming from the city under Vegeta's torment. The sound was quickly followed by Chi-Chi's scream from the living room. He nearly tore the door off its hinges as he burst through it, sprinting to his mom's aid. "Mom, are you okay?" he shouted, his voice echoing down the small hallway. He rushed into the dark living room, his heart pounding. Chi-Chi was on the couch, covering her mouth, her eyes wide and filled with tears as she stared at the flashing television screen. "Mom, what's wrong?" Gohan asked, sitting down next to her, feeling a mix of nerves and fear. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she wrapped her arms around him, sobbing uncontrollably. "Mom, please, what's going on?" Gohan's voice trembled as he gently pushed her away, desperate for answers. Chi-Chi pointed a shaky finger towards the TV. Gohan followed her gesture and saw it was a live news broadcast. The reporter on the screen was stammering, visibly trembling. "That there seems to be a battle going on now. Much of West Sea City has been destroyed. I'm afraid to move any closer to the destruction." Gohan's attention shifted from the reporter's words to the scenes unfolding behind him. Buildings lay in ruins, reduced to piles of rubble with fires casting an eerie glow. Gohan realized the power outage was likely due to transformers being torn down during Vegeta's rampage. His eyes widened in horror as he noticed the bodies scattered amidst the wreckage, each one still and lifeless. "That bastard!" Gohan's fists clenched, his anger boiling over. "He's going to pay for this," he thought, gritting his teeth. His leg began to shake as he anticipated confronting the monstrous Sen responsible for the carnage. The reporter turned suddenly, reacting to another large explosion to his left. Gohan watched as panic spread across the man's face. "Oh good God! The battle's coming over here!" The camera swung around, capturing Piccolo flying past, crashing into a building. Gohan's heart dropped. The camera followed Piccolo as he slowly got up from the rubble, missing an arm. Gohan winced, but then saw Piccolo shout, and a new limb shot out from the stump. The reporter's voice, now frantic, screamed, "Oh God!" The camera swerved again, and Gohan gasped as a flash of light rushed toward them. The screen went black, flickering to static. Gohan jumped up quickly from the couch. "Piccolo's okay. If Piccolo's alive, then everything can be fixed. We can still save everyone," Gohan thought, hope surging through him. His mother shook her head and pulled him into a tight embrace. "Son, wait, don't get any crazy ideas," she pleaded. Gohan hugged her back for a moment before gently pushing her arms away. "Piccolo needs my help." "No!" Chi-Chi screamed, grabbing Gohan's small hand with a desperate grip. "Mom!" He pulled his hand free, barely escaping her vice-like grip. "You saw Mr. Piccolo. He needs my help." Tears welled up in her eyes. "But you're barely 9. He's a grown man. Whatever he is, he's an adult. You're just a child. You wouldn't make a difference. Stay here." With her last words, she made a quick grab for her son, which Gohan narrowly avoided. Gohan stepped back, determination in his eyes. "Mom, Mr. Piccolo needs my help. I can't let him down." He turned and ran down the hallway into his room. He could hear his mom screaming his name as he pulled out the rectangular box from under his bed. He lifted the lid and pulled out the Saiyan armor he'd kept from Vegeta. Ironic, he thought before quickly changing and shoving the box back under his bed. He looked up to see his mother standing in the doorway, her arms crossed. "You are not going. It's way too dangerous." She waved her arms frantically. "You could be killed. Do you realize that?" She began to cry again. I can't lose you too. I can't lose you, Gohan. Please, Gohan," she pleaded, her voice breaking. Gohan stared at her for a few moments, tears in his eyes. "I love you, Mom." With that, he turned and bolted out of his window. Tears streamed down his face as his mother's screams grew fainter. He squinted as West City started to come into view. Smoke rose from various locations. Several buildings were completely vaporized. He came to a stop and hovered over the large city. The young boy could barely make out Piccolo's energy. He searched for Krillin's, Yamcha's, and Tien's energy but couldn't find theirs. His eyes widened as he felt Vegeta's energy. It had grown enormously since they last met during Goku's arrival and Frieza's second death. In fact, Gohan had only ever felt this kind of power from his father when he fought Frieza, when he had become a Super Saiyan. Gohan began to think, what can I do against a Super Saiyan, especially one as vicious as Vegeta? The young Saiyan looked down at his body and realized he was shivering from fright. He tried to stop the feeling but failed. Suddenly, an explosion below caught his attention. The thought crossed his mind, you don't have to do this, you don't have to fight, you're only 9. No one would blame you if you ran away. Gohan contemplated the idea before shaking his head and dismissing it. No, he said aloud, his voice firm. I will fight as hard as I can. He powered up to his max as he spoke. For my father. With his last words, he shot full speed toward where he had seen the explosion. Down below, he saw Piccolo's mangled body lying unconscious on the ground. He nearly shouted out his name before he saw Vegeta crash next to the bloody Namekian. What? Thought the confused boy. Vegeta stood up slowly, panting. Gohan took note of his impressive Super Saiyan aura, but it was flickering. A young blonde woman in a cowgirl costume landed next to him. Vegeta put up a defensive stance but looked distraught. Gohan watched in horror as the blonde shot a quick punch to Vegeta's gut, causing him to crumple over in pain. She quickly grabbed his head with both hands and smashed her knee into his nose. Blood spurted from his now broken nose as he took a step back, holding his face. He shot a large blast at the girl, who easily deflected it before rushing towards him and throwing a fierce punch to his cheek, followed by a roundhouse kick to his arm, causing it to snap from the pressure. Gohan heard Vegeta's piercing scream before it was silenced by the girl's fist in his face, causing him to fall back. His eyes widened even further as he felt Piccolo's thoughts enter his mind. The girl, blast the girl. Gohan looked back to his mentor, who was still lying on the ground, clearly broken, but his non-swollen eye was staring directly at Gohan. The boy mentally messaged back, "What's happening?" He didn't know how, but Piccolo managed to shout back in his mind, "Blast her now, before she kills Vegeta." The blonde stood over Vegeta's fallen form as he slowly lost his Super Saiyan status. His left eye was swollen shut, and there was blood streaming from his side. He pushed himself into a sitting position with his undamaged arm and glared at the girl as she walked calmly towards him. Gohan realized now that Vegeta hadn't been attacking the city, it had been this girl. He quickly raised his hands above his head and whispered, "Masenko." "Well, this was fun," the blonde girl said with a smile, standing over Vegeta menacingly. Vegeta felt a sudden surge of energy to his right and turned his head slightly. He caught sight of Gohan about to fire and grinned before turning his attention back to the android. He spat defiantly, "Rotten hell, you stupid bitch." The smile on the girl's face vanished as she lifted her hand, revealing a small sphere of golden energy building in her palm. "Meet you there." The blonde tilted her head in confusion as she heard someone shout, "Ha!" She turned her head and saw a giant golden beam rocketing towards her. Panic flashed in her eyes, and she quickly threw the small golden sphere toward the beam. It was easily consumed and continued barreling toward her. The blast hit her like a torpedo, sweeping her off her feet and burying her in several feet of rubble. Gohan landed next to Vegeta, who was struggling to get up. The young boy felt bad about assuming Vegeta had been the bad guy and offered his hand, but the proud Saiyan swatted it away. "Get away from me, brat," Vegeta growled. Gohan took a step back. Once Vegeta was up, Gohan asked, "Who was an android?" Vegeta answered quickly, attempting to build his energy back up. Gohan didn't question further. He had seen stranger things, much stranger, like finding out his dad was an alien and that having a tail meant turning into a giant monkey. Gohan noticed Vegeta struggling to regain his Super Saiyan form and said, "Here." He grabbed Vegeta's uninjured arm and focused. Vegeta quickly responded, "The hell are you?" before feeling a fresh flow of energy pouring into him. A few moments later, Vegeta pulled his arm away from Gohan and said, "That's enough." He quickly transformed and said, "Keep the rest of your energy, you'll need it." Gohan took a step back and nodded. He noticed the rubble to his left beginning to shift and quickly turned towards it in a ready, though weary stance. The girl emerged from the rubble and glared at Vegeta with a scowl. She glanced down and noticed the small 9-year-old in a fighting stance. Her frown disappeared, replaced with a large smile. "Oh," she cooed, leaning over with her hands on her knees. In a kiddish voice, she said, "Are you the one who sent that big energy blast?" Gohan took a step back in confusion. The smile on her face vanished as she said, "'Cause it really hurt." She lifted her hand to reveal a nearly fully charged photon beam aimed at Gohan's chest. Just as she was about to release it, a small blast shot past Gohan's head and hit the charging sphere, causing it to explode in her hand and force her several feet away. Vegeta stepped past Gohan and growled, "Don't forget your fights with me, bitch." He turned his head and said to Gohan, "Grab the Namekian and get him to safety. We can't afford to lose the Dragon Balls." Gohan nodded and had turned to fly off when Vegeta added, "And try to avoid the other one." Gohan looked back at Vegeta, his mouth slightly ajar. "The other one?" Vegeta nodded. "There's another one. He has black hair and an orange bandana. Looks like that bitch. Watch out for him." He saw that Gohan was stunned in place and shouted viciously, "Move it, brat." Gohan snapped back to his senses and nodded. He quickly turned and flew to where Piccolo was lying unconscious in a decimated house. Vegeta watched as the boy picked up the Namekian and flew off. 18 grinned at the Saiyan prince. "Seems someone's got a soft spot, huh?" she said, getting into a ready stance. Vegeta laughed. "I just don't want the brat in the way when I crush you." While he didn't want to admit it, the android was right. Vegeta did want that boy safe. He may be all that's left of the Saiyan race soon, the Prince of Saiyans thought before rushing towards the android. Gohan flew as fast as he could, struggling to carry his injured master without further harming him. His destination was Kami's lookout. It made sense to bring Piccolo there, as the Senzu beans were with Korin just below. As worried thoughts raced through his mind, he couldn't stop focusing on the battle raging behind him. He released a frustrated growl as he again failed to trace the android's energy, relying only on Vegeta's massive yet dropping power level to determine the fight. It didn't look good. Gohan had noticed that he couldn't sense anything from the girl, and he suspected the same from the other android. This thought worried him and put him on high alert for anything suspicious. As he was only 2 miles away from the tower, Gohan felt it safe to let up his guard just a little bit and focus on flying. This was a mistake.